can do to work on safety, pedestrian and bicycle issues in this neighborhood. But it's not likely the end of what we're doing. We still have a planning study that is planned for the area to look at a full range of issues. So I just wanted to remind everybody of that. I also wanted to mention that my predecessor, the new Vice Mayor, Angie Henderson, is also on the line, and she has valuable historical knowledge, as we all know. So I am really happy that she was able to join us as well.
Absolutely. And Vice Mayor, if there's anything you'd like to say, feel free.
I just, on my desktop here for the first time, I hope you can hear me. I appreciate Councilwoman Ewing, and obviously my neighbors know I reside in this neighborhood and drive this area daily, and I know Sandy's going to do a great job, and I'm just here to listen in and be of assistance if I can. So thank you.
Great. Thanks for joining us. Councilman Druffel also represents a portion of this. He's kind of on the northern edge on one side of the street. So this is a by-district project. He is in a Budget and Finance Committee meeting at the moment, and he won't be able to join us, but certainly very interested in the project and the outcome of this meeting. With that, we're going to go ahead and get started. Just a little bit of information, as I mentioned, as an overview on the traffic calming program. We do focus on residential streets. That's as opposed to some of the larger streets that are meant to carry more traffic and sometimes at a slightly higher speed. We really focus on lowering speeds, and that sounds obvious, but sometimes people think we are trying to move traffic, shift it away from one street to somewhere else, and that's really not what our design is intended to do. We look very carefully at the types of countermeasures that we deploy on a street, just to make sure that we're focusing on speed reduction and nothing else related to car travel on the street. This is one part of a bigger effort in Nashville and really across the nation, dealing with some of the safety issues that our country has seen involving speed. Engineering is part of it. That is what the Department of Transportation has in its purview. It can affect a change in the right of way. It cannot enforce traffic. That's the job of Metro PD. And a lot of us wish, often we would have more police out in the cruiser writing tickets, and that might bring about slower speeds, and it might. We typically think of those impacts being relatively short-lived, but it's certainly a component of a well-functioning safety system, and we work hand in hand with MNPD on this program and others to try and bring about better outcomes. Education is a big part of this as well. Some of the things that we can introduce in the right-of-way as part of a traffic calming program do get to reinforcing a message, an education message in terms of what the speed is or how fast you are going. But by and large, we really focus on that engineering component, putting things in the road that will physically limit speeds. And we like to show this slide. It's one of the main reasons why we feel like this is a really important program. And I think a lot of residents in Davidson County agree with this sentiment, that you'll see that in the numbers here about how in demand the program is. But we know when we've got a street where we've got cars and bicyclists and pedestrians and everybody trying to share the same limited space, that if we can slow the cars down, and there is an unfortunate instance where there's a pedestrian car collision, there's nothing like speed to boost the survivability of that outcome. In other words, if we can bring traffic down to that 25 mile an hour or less threshold, you've got a much higher probability of not walking away from the crash, just surviving it. And so we really focus on that. And Page is one of these streets where you've got a lot of pedestrians who want to walk on the street. We're aware of that. Some probably make the decision not to because they don't feel safe doing that. And so all of these things kind of come into our thoughts when we're designing a traffic calming project. I mentioned the in-demand nature of the program, it has remained exceedingly popular ever since we really started putting in speed cushions back about 5 years ago or so. As of this last traffic calming application window, we have 2 of those a year, and as of this last one, we're still well above 400 streets, just like Page Road, where people have requested that we come in and do a project on here because a lot of Nashvilleians are seeing these same issues involving high speeds and sometimes worse behavior. Just different things happening out there on our residential streets, which are not desirable. We do pick about 50 projects a year right now, although this last fall there was an announcement that Nashville is doing its largest traffic calming cohort ever. We selected 85 new streets at one fell swoop. So thanks to council and their interest and support of this program and finding the funds to do that, and we're working diligently on that. I'm glad this project is ahead of those. We're a little bit ahead of that tidal wave of new projects coming in, so hopefully that'll make this one move along pretty smoothly. Wanted to give you a little bit of information about how Page was made it into the program with that much demand. You must have done something right, or something is wrong out on the street for it to be selected, and that's absolutely the case. We let the data drive these projects as to who gets selected and who might have to wait a little bit longer. This is a chart showing those considerations that we use in prioritizing the projects. About 70% of the score has to do with actual driving and traffic characteristics, speed and volume. What drives that score. Speed is the biggest single consideration that we have. But the other 30% are very important too, and those often differentiate which projects get to move ahead and which have to wait. And that has to do with the presence of things like sidewalks or transit routes. You guys don't have sidewalks, and so that actually bumps your score up. We do take that into consideration. The presence of places that might be a walking destination. Of course, you got a big one there with the park, and so that factors into the score as well. Parks and schools and those types of things. And then we do look at the instance of any kind of a pedestrian injury or fatality crash that might have happened on the road as well. So we take all of that, we score all of that. We do a lot of data collection after every application window to get new speeds and new volumes and reshuffle the deck. And Page Road, fortunately or unfortunately, was in the top 25 or so that we have chosen to move forward with this round. Here's a little bit of the data from the street. The limits are from Harding Pike to the north down to Bellmead Boulevard. This is one of our longer projects. It's about a mile and a third, and so a lot of them tend to be shorter. We look at a couple of things. Just logical termini for such a project is a big part of it. And then we look at what was actually applied for. That comes into play too. This was a neighbor applied for. This is a neighborhood-driven project, and that neighbors can apply for streets. I'll show you those in just a second. But on Page Road, the prevailing speed, the speed that we used to rank all of these projects was 37 miles an hour, which is not, it's probably middle of the pack for the projects that were selected this round. You've got about not quite 2,400 per day. People are sometimes surprised at how much traffic is on these streets. Again, that's about in the middle for the ones that were selected. We will do traffic calming up to streets that have up to 5,000 cars a day. That gives you any level of reference there. One of the things that I think is really
Mr.
sure,
if I may, it's 25 miles per hour posted on Page and has been for quite some time. So is that accurate there, street data?
Yeah, I think it's just a typo in the PowerPoint. But
thank you.
When we make that speed, we do base it always back to 25 miles an hour. It's not based back relative to the actual posted speed. So yeah, thanks for pointing that out. One of the aspects of this street that is different than a lot of streets that we see and do traffic calming on here in Metro is the width on this one. This is a narrow street. You all know that. I think what makes it feel particularly narrow too is that there's large trees and things right along the side, pretty substantial ditch drop-offs and all of that. Those are actually good things from a traffic calming standpoint. Typically, we see the wider the street, the higher the speeds. When you just feel like you can go faster, often people will. In this case, I think that width kind of works with us. I don't think it's going to really change our proposed design for the street as much, but it does make it a little more difficult if you're trying to walk or you're pushing a stroller and you've got all of these competing forms of mobility happening in the same limited space. It can be kind of an issue sometimes. So we're very much taking that into account. A minute ago when I mentioned that you do have to apply for the program, we have a map of those, and we like to show the limits of this project using this map for a couple reasons, and I'll point those out here. So Page Road is shown in green. It's got the big yellow arrow pointing to it right in the middle of the page. Of course, that goes from Harding down to Belmead. Those are the projects that are in green are all in about the same spot as you. You see Percy Warner is highlighted. You see Bald's Gap is highlighted. That's because they're in the same cohort as you. They are working through the same series of meetings and design work and so forth. Those are projects in green that have been selected and are moving forward in the program. The projects that are shown purple have an application in on them, but they have not been selected into the program yet. Their scores just weren't as high. So this map can be helpful. And by the way, this is an interactive map that is available on the Metro Traffic Calming webpage. It's one of the many pieces of information you can get on that webpage, and I'll give you a link to that at the end of the presentation. But you can pan all over the county and see where all of our active projects are at any given time. And the purple ones may be of interest if you're curious as to, this street could really use something, or, and you want to look and see if there's an application in on it. You can go ahead and do that. Over in the upper right-hand corner of the slide, you see a little blue shadow box that I've added on this one as well. And the only reason I did that is because if you look, you'll see just a little bit off of the main map, and that's why I put it in an inset. You'll see a dashed blue line. That's on Breslin Road through West Mead. Some of you may be familiar with it. It's the one that kind of takes you most directly up to Nashville West shopping area. And the blue dashed lines show you places where we have installed traffic calming. Typically, those are going to be speed cushions or raised devices. We'll talk about what that means. But we like to show those because if you're interested, but you've never had the experience of driving over these, this map will show you where these have been installed so that you can go do that. You can find where maybe your closest project is and go drive over those if you're interested in doing so. So a little bit about the tools that we have available in our program. We'll start with speed cushions. This is really the bread and butter of this program, and a lot of people really just associate traffic calming with speed cushions. That's okay. That's 95% probably of what we do, and so that's very understandable. When I show you the proposed plan for Page, this like almost all projects that we do is going to be a central component of it. We have a couple of different design aspects within the speed cushion tool. You'll see that we can lay them out in different configurations. You see the picture there with 2 of them. You'll see some that have 3 of them. Sometimes they, like in the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see 3 and also a little plastic stick sticking up. All of those things are just meant to reinforce the idea that when we deploy speed cushions, we have to make sure we get them all the way across the road. If we leave 4 or 5 feet or more, we know what's going to happen. People are going to drive around them, and we've got experience where people will actually leave the road to drive around them if we let them, if we give them room to do that. I think that's a pretty tall order on Page. I think you've got some pretty unique side conditions where people are not going to do that because of the edge condition with ditches and trees and so forth. But we know that's one aspect. The reason why there is a gap in between those has to do with a reduced impact to larger wheelbase vehicles like ambulances, like fire trucks. And so those types of vehicles, we don't want to slow down too much. Those folks need to get to where they need to go quickly. And so that's the point behind leaving a gap in those. Those can be straddled a little bit easier by larger vehicles like that. They're only about 3 inches tall, but they really have an impact on how fast traffic is willing to drive over those, and that's how they do their work. When you go over them, this is not like going over a speed bump in the Kroger's or the Home Depot parking lot. This is a much more gentle approach, but still not something that you want to fly over at 40 miles an hour. We really try to, with the speed limit being 25 miles an hour here, we're really going to target about a 15 to 20 mile an hour comfortable drive over these cushions, at each location. And what we try to do then is just space those out so that you get a nice, consistent speed at that 20 to 25 miles an hour all the way through the limits of the project. These are 6 feet wide. That's pretty standard. But the other tool that we have to modify with this is how long they are. They come in 3 different lengths. We use 7-foot lengths, most often in very dense areas. You think of places like Germantown or East Nashville or Edge Hill or things like that, that really are first ring neighborhoods that are very congested, and we really want to slow traffic down most aggressively. That's where we really focus with the 7-foot cushions. 10.5 is kind of our standard go-to for most neighborhoods in Nashville that are kind of more on the suburban side. And then as you get into more rural areas of Davidson County or very low density suburban areas, we might use a 14-foot cushion. We haven't made that decision yet here, but those are kind of the options we have to look at with the length of the cushion and how aggressively they would slow traffic. Speed tables they're a very close cousin to the speed cushion. Really, the only difference here is they are one continuous piece all the way across. We will use these very occasionally, but way more often than not, we're using the speed cushions, again, just because of the lesser impact to those important types of vehicles. Everything else is pretty much the same. They slow traffic really the same way. We do have some before and after data some people often ask about, and of course, as engineers, we always want more data, but what we've got is pretty good and shows a fairly consistent lowering of the speed limit by anywhere from 9 to 12 miles an hour on average, and that's across the length of the entire length of a project that we would install. So we would expect to see something similar. Every street's a little different, and people will drive those different. You'll drive it different one day to the next sometimes, and so we understand that. But we're seeing pretty consistent results in a favorable way that traffic really has slowed down. That's anecdotal. When you drive over these, if you were to go to Breslin and drive over them, or just if you were to park and watch cars, you will see this, or follow someone across these cushions, you will see that they are quite effective. Another tool that we've got in our toolbox that we use, probably the second place in terms of how frequently we use these, is radar feedback signs. You may have seen some of these around. They're solar powered signs, and they just do what they say they do. They give you their feedback about how fast you're going. A lot of times we'll use these in places where we really can't use a speed cushion, and that may be places like that have a real sharp curve or a steep hill, or there's just so many driveways and intersections and all that we just can't fit a speed cushion without blocking someone or making it real inconvenient on somebody. We might use a feedback sign like this, and so it can be a good tool. It is effective, especially in the short term. We're still in the kind of the data collection mode to see how that effectiveness lives the longer the sign is out there. So just another tool that we have, and again, this gets back to some of that educational component of traffic safety. Occasionally, we'll use narrowing if a street does not have any pavement markings. Sometimes adding a stripe can visually narrow the street and give the perception that it's a little narrower than it actually is. We have to be careful in doing that. This picture here, we added a center line under the different types of conditions that may communicate that it's more of a major street and that it's okay to go faster. So we really look at those on a case by case basis to make a recommendation about whether we think that's a good treatment to use for slowing traffic down or not. One that we keep in the toolbox, but we've had a lot of thoughts concerning larger vehicles and how they navigate these, and is the some of the inconvenience that these create worth the trouble of putting them in. So the jury's still out on some of those, but we have deployed them in some neighborhoods. Our traffic circles, school buses particularly have a tough time navigating these, and so it is something we keep in the tool, but use pretty sparingly here. Another tool that we have, which is really more suited to probably a more urban environment, not all the time, but often, and that is the building out of curb radiuses at intersections with the bulb outs. And you see some striping here that's taken an old intersection that was built very wide and tried to, again, visually narrow that. And we use that in partnership with those plastic, they're called delineators. I call them sticks, but something you don't want to run over. And so a car will have to slow down in order to make that turn and make those turns at a lower speed than they ordinarily otherwise might. And then the picture on the right is called a chicane. It's sort of an artificial zigzag pattern that can be striped in. It works best in combination with some on-street parking. So again, limited to kind of some special conditions. We do have a few of these around town, but don't introduce them very often as a new treatment. Sometimes people will say, what we really need, and I know this is the case on Page Road, people say what we really need is sidewalks and somewhere safe to walk that is outside of the road. And there have been meetings that discuss the issues and details and cost of doing that on a street like this. And so there are other avenues to request those types of treatments. Hub Nashville is always the best go-to. If you're not familiar with it, it's hub.nashville.gov, or you can just pick up the phone and call 311. We like to promote that because really any service that you want to request in Metro, that's your best first stop. It's logged, and so you've got a record of having made that request, and they get that to the right people. And then we've got a couple of people here that do a great job in their respective areas with walking and biking infrastructure there, and then beautification and vegetation and so forth there. So on to, I guess, the middle objective of the evening. We want to show you what we're thinking about Page Road and get some feedback. And by the way, I've started this meeting, and I should have mentioned this earlier, but I have started recording this meeting, and so this will be this meeting recording will be housed on, again, Metro's webpage. So if you see this and you want to get a closer look and I move forward or whatever, you'll always be able to go back to this meeting and pull this back up again. So anyway, and if there's someone, one of your neighbors wasn't able to be here, feel free to direct them to this meeting. So that's one thing. And then let me just kind of walk through, now that we've defined what some of those treatments are, walk through this layout and make sure that we're clear. And as I do that, I don't mind at all. You all have the ability to unmute yourself and feel free to ask a question or a clarification or tell us anything you want to about this project or about what you're seeing here. So feel free to do that as we go along as well. As I mentioned, this is a little over a mile-long project from one end to the other. I think I've kind of changed the rotation here, so let me point out, try to get you oriented back. This time Belmead Boulevard is to the left-hand side down there at this stop sign. That stop sign just indicating there that Page Road itself stops. That becomes kind of a design control for us. Stop sign at Belmead at Brookfield, at West Tyne, and then of course the signal up at Harding. Those become kind of control points. And so we look individually at those sections in between those stop signs because we know traffic is stopping at those locations or predominantly stopping at those locations. We know there are violations of stop signs like there are everything. So, but those become kind of our controls. So we look at the distance between those control points to determine how many sets of speed cushions would we recommend and where we would place those. And we're looking at a couple of things. So when you see in between Belmead Boulevard and Brookfield Avenue, you see 5 locations of speed cushions. And what we do is we look at a good average spacing. As I mentioned, one of our biggest objectives is to try to get traffic to kind of go at a consistently low speed across the limits of the project. If we put 2 real close together and then leave a big gap and then put 2 more at the end, we know what's going to happen. There's going to be speeding up in the middle, and it's just not the best situation. So as we space these out, we look for about a 300 to 500 foot spacing, typically, sometimes a little more, rarely less than 300. That's pretty close together. But and then beyond that, we start looking at locations of curves, of hills, and of driveways and intersections. I want to say a word about driveways. We do everything that we can to keep speed cushions as far as we can from individual driveways. In some neighborhoods, as you would imagine, it's one driveway after the next. I don't think we'll have an issue here on Page. I think the lots here are larger and the driveways further apart. But our kind of threshold is we'll never put a speed cushion closer than 15 feet from a driveway, and I think we can do a lot better than that here. Intersections kind of the same way. We try not to encroach on intersections. We try to do that as little as possible as well. Anyway, so between that first section, we've got 5 speed cushions spotted in. Between Brookfield and Tyne, there'll be another 2. And I recognize I'm not giving you real specifics here. That will come in the next step as we get on the ground and walk the project and lay those in. We'll be able to give you much more specific details about where these are being proposed, and then 3 more locations between West Tyne and Harding. So it's pretty straightforward, I think. These are going to be the 2x2 cushions that you see up in the left-hand corner there, just meaning that the street is not wide enough that we would need any more than that. 2 side by side will be plenty. And there is signage that accompanies those. We can give you some more information about that if you're interested, probably at the next meeting. But that's just kind of a standard detail. But I will stop for see if there are any comments or questions if I have not laid that out clearly enough.
This is Rich Crofton. I do have a question. I've noticed. I don't like going down Page Road because there's more activity there. The center line of the road is not exacting like it is in other places. Some people are infringing onto the other side of the road and they're unaware of it. And what I do is I go down to Cheek Road and Cheek over to 100 if I'm going to Harding Pike. But I also recommend that even without any speed cushions, I think Cheek Road or Brookfield or some of these other ones that are sort of through streets to go over to 100 rather than stay on Page. They should have a striped line on them, which delineates the center of the lane. But that's the only thing I've seen so far.
Okay, well, thank you for that. That's a good comment that kind of fosters or spurs an idea that we hear often when we present a project like this to a neighborhood. Your comment, Mr. Crofton's a little different, but what we'll hear sometimes is, at this one intersection you can't see very good, or we have a lot of pedestrians that like to cross at this intersection, and is there something we can do about that? Sometimes there is, and sometimes there is not in the context of this project. But what we will often tell people is when speed cushions go in, typically what we see is speed across that whole street slows down. And so while a sight distance issue, the sight distance itself doesn't get any better. Just the fact that traffic is coming at you much more slowly seems to help things. And so I would just kind of levy that comment against yours about the narrowness of the road and people encroach on it. Of course, this project is not going to make the street any wider, but hopefully in doing that, just the fact that there will be cars passing each other at a slower speed will help with that. But I certainly appreciate what you're saying about the adjacent streets having some markings on those as well.
Well, then just as an addition to that, then when you're going slower, that doesn't change your depth perception as to how close you are to the edge of the road.
It's true.
And anything that can help you know that you're in the lane that you're supposed to be in would be helpful.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Hammond, if I may, just for some historical context, this is Vice Mayor Henderson. Mr. Crofton, our neighborhood was in fact one of the first neighborhoods to participate in traffic calming and go to 25 miles per hour because we had some narrower roads. And back in the day before they did speed cushions, one of the first kind of treatments they were doing were doing roadway striping differently. And so all of our side streets to be appropriate kind of for neighborhood scale, I know it's kind of counterintuitive, but they do not have yellow center lines because I think Mr. Hammond would tell you as well, there's a fair amount of research, especially for hilly roads or roads that have a real kind of straight shot, that people pick up speed when they have a yellow center line because it gives them the certainty of kind of where they are in the roadway, which I appreciate is something that you're looking for, but that also good data shows makes people speed. So if you look at the difference between, say, when Page was first repaved with the yellow center line down closer to Harding, people go way faster on that first segment of Page with the yellow center line than they do further down. It may feel awkward, but folks do go slower through that middle part. But what I will say, Mr. Hammond, in my experience, is people have gotten more experienced with the area of Page that does not have the center line. They now go very fast through there as well. Because again, you're kind of trying to give drivers a little bit of something different to, less certainty on the driver's part slows them down. But I appreciate your point, Mr. Crofton, but I just wanted to give some of that kind of background context. That's why our streets look differently. That was an intentional choice to do white edge lines and not center lines.
Okay, but as I said, not to beat a dead horse, but I go on Cheek Road and I have that same problem because there is no center line, and I'll see a car coming from the other side of a hill and they're smack in the middle of the lane coming over the hill. Over a hill that might be pointed out as not being able to see very well because of the hill. And you see them come over the center of right over the middle.
Yes,
anyway,
I appreciate it. On the top of a hill, there should be a center line. Yes, sir.
There's not.
This is Allison Stevens. I have a question about the cushions. It may be just the way that it's pictured in this image that you have up here to the top left, but and I know you said that, you have to get special vehicles through, such as ambulances and those types of things, but it seems like if there's no oncoming traffic, that someone could kind of circumvent by basically just, having their wheel well just straddle both sides of that cushion. Have you found that to be the case, or are these in fact wide enough where you would not be able to do that?
The latter. They are wide enough. That cushion the cushions are 6 feet wide, and when we space those out, we never space any more than 4 foot in between. And so you can get through there and keep 2 wheels on flat pavement, but your other 2 wheels are going to ride up on the cushion. And in my opinion, that's the worst way to drive across these. The best way to drive across these is just to do your best to straddle them. but you can't straddle them. I mean, unless you're in some sort of a monster truck or a motorcycle, you're gonna encounter that with two of your wheels. There's just really no way around it. And even ambulances, when we say, we're careful to say that minimize the impact, even they can't straddle these completely. And so, vehicle, and then certainly your smaller cars are gonna have both sets of wheels there. And so, yeah, you're gonna you can't get through them.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Hammond.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Hammond, this is Lauren Balmer at 127 Page. Couple of things. I'm a good friend of Tom Druffels. I've headed up a committee with him. I'm a co-chairman of a public safety committee. I was working with Gil Thomas with NDOT, who is your traffic calming manager. He's no longer there. In any case, I'd had several conversations with him, so I was aware of the project and that we were a little backed up in doing this. We decided with Tom Druffel, one of the things that we wanted to do was something that we could, and we'd be interested to see how that played out. We have made up some please 25-mile-an-hour signs. We have numerous ones that are between West Tyne and Harding. There are folks that notice that they are going too fast and do want to slow down. They will, but there is a large contingent of folks that don't care. So if you put up the sign making folks aware, that's good in the interim, just like a police officer patrolling the area. But I do like the idea of the speed cushions. We have heard from a lot of folks where the speed cushions have been put in. I know you say there's areas where we can go drive those. One of the things that I've heard, and that is a negative, I'd be curious if you've heard it and what you say to it. We have a lot of contractor trucks that come back and forth between the area. There has been some comments about the noise, the thump that is made. I don't know. I haven't personally heard it, but have you heard that comment? And I've heard people wanting them pulled out after they've been put in because of the noise and the frustration with the larger vehicles, your UPS, your FedExes, some of those vehicles, all the contractor trucks that, they become very disturbing. Is that something you've heard of, and how have you answered that?
Yeah, I mean, as honestly as I can say it, I have not heard of the noise. There's other reasons why. We put these things to a vote, and we'll talk about that. And your neighborhood, and we do that because we know this is not for everybody, and so we're very open and candid about that. But noise is not one that I have heard. I could see it, like if you had a landscape truck that had some wheelbarrows, or maybe even a smaller lawnmower and they hit that too fast, and there was some jarring of that equipment. I could see it. So it doesn't surprise me that there is some noise, and if someone were to complain about that, I absolutely believe that, understand that. But that has not come to our attention as being a major issue for most streets, but.
Yeah, very good. I'm excited y'all are doing this, and can't thank you enough. The speeds are ridiculous, and we obviously need something very bad, and there continues to be more and more and more traffic. So, thank you for the approval. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for all your explanations, and I'm very excited. I just heard that comment from someone else. I was just curious if you'd heard that before, but thank you for all you all are doing.
Yeah, I'll check with the rest of our team and see if anybody else is there. That's a good comment.
Yeah. Hey, Jeff.
Thank you.
A quick question, Jeff. Just a quick question. Do you guys ever do a combination of both the radar feedback and the cushions? Because I do like both those options. So, is there a way that you could have both of those put in without being too overbearing with what it looks like?
The answer is yes. There are projects where we have proposed both in the same project, but maybe not for the reasons you're thinking. We typically try not to do it, and the reason we don't is because if we've done a good job with these speed cushions, I think our record is pretty good. If you get them spaced right, it's not rocket science. That's about all you have to do. But when you get them, when you do get them in effectively, speed's lower. And you know, we don't really need a feedback sign telling every car that it's now going 25 miles an hour. That's great. It's feel good, but it's kind of redundant and a really an unnecessary expenditure on this. But where we have proposed it is because we have a section that we couldn't get a good consistent run of speed cushions in the way we wanted them. And so we kind of use it as an interim measure that says, you know, it's been 1,000 feet in between cushions, and the reason is because there's a big hill here. Let's put one of these feedback signs in the middle, just to remind people, hey, you're not out of the traffic calming area yet. You're still in it. We're going to remind you of your speed because just up the road here in a little bit, there's more speed cushions to come. So we will partner and pair those together occasionally, but in this case, because I think we can get a pretty consistent stretch of devices here, I wouldn't foresee doing that.
Mr. Hammond, this is Battle Williford. I live on Page Road as well. I really appreciate what you are doing. This is a long time coming, and I've written Ms. Henderson about it a few times, or Vice Mayor Henderson, excuse me. But you mentioned at the very end of the beginning that signs may come with it. And I'm assuming that's a big sign that says speed hump or something next to what you're proposing. I was wondering is this something that can be added later if the speed humps work initially without signs? And I just say this from the perspective of keeping the neighborhood's aesthetic and beauty, without going.
Yeah, good question. I don't know that this presentation, sorry, I was gonna flip back and see if any, this one's pretty good right here. It's a little grainy, but on the picture in the upper left and at the right hand side of that picture, you see what our typical sign looks like. It's a diamond sign, which is a warning sign. It's going to be yellow, and it says speed cushions, and then there's a little plaque that'll say 20 miles an hour. That's our typical sign, and we don't do that so much as part of an attempt to slow traffic down. It's really a warning sign to warn motorists that, hey, there is something in the road here that you need to take notice of. It's just like a curve ahead sign or a fallen rocks or a duck crossing sign. It's meant to bring attention, and so we have to, it's our responsibility to warn people of these devices. And that's really the point about the signs. It's not to bring any more speed traffic calming aspect to it. And so for that reason, we really can't just pull them out and say, well, we think they're kind of ostentatious, and so we're going to not use them here. They are really part and parcel of the project. But I will say, the policy that NDOT uses on these, anytime we have a run of speed cushions that is in between two streets. So I think, for instance, in between Forest Park, and I'm not sure if you can see my cursor here, so I'll use a lot of words, but in between Forest Park Drive and Cheek Road, we have 2 cushions proposed. That's really not it. Let me use this as an example. Between West Pine and Harding, we have 3 cushions proposed. We may not have to sign that middle one, and because what we can do is we can sign the first one that says speed cushions ahead, and we can sign the other one coming from the other direction, speed cushions ahead, and not necessarily have to sign all 3. But where we have an intersection in between and new traffic is entering this road that would not have seen those signs, our policy is we do sign at each of those locations. There's one other benefit that it can have. Let me go back to my picture. And again, I don't know that it's just going to depend on what set of speed cushions we're looking at on page. But as I mentioned, we know there's some severe drop-offs, and we know there's big trees, and there's probably landscaping walls and other things that a car does not want to exit the roadway in order to drive around these things. But that can also be kind of a hardening of the edge, so that in this case, if that sign weren't there, there would be somebody who would have the gall to drive around this thing, leave the road, and try to drive around it and come back. And so that sign can be a little bit of extra prevention from keeping people to do that. But just a couple of thoughts there, but for the most part, yeah, it's kind of part of the installation and not something we'll just drop or bring back at will. Good question.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else there?
I
Sure.
have one last question, sorry. And
Sure.
have you found, I know you have some of those sticks, delineators, whatever you call them, in a couple of these photos. I noticed you didn't exactly use any examples where those were placed down the center of the road. I know there's a couple places in town where those are placed kind of like down the double line or down the center of the road, also as a traffic calming mechanism. I know Page is obviously very narrow, so that might not be an option here, but I was just curious if, if you found the speed cushions to be a superior method of traffic calming and that's why the other was not proposed.
Yeah, they're very superior in a way that we would not recommend using delineators by themselves really for mainline traffic calming. They can be very helpful, as we showed, like at corners and things like that, to try and shorten up some of, if we were designing a road today, we might have a tighter turning radius, more like you do in our parts or in downtown, where you can't drive around these corners very quickly. But these weren't built like that. They were built at a different time, and so we have to come back and kind of use devices like those delineators to recreate that. Yeah, you're right. If we put delineators in the middle of this road, they're not going to last very long. They will get hit, and they get hit practically everywhere. It becomes kind of a catch up to keep those maintained and keep those replaced. And with 550 square miles of metro government to tend to, that's a big maintenance issue. Where you may have seen these probably came about, there was a very acute pedestrian crossing need. Sometimes that I know they've been put in, like where you have a crosswalk and people just don't comply with the fact that a person's trying to cross the street, and so very occasionally those have been put in the median or in the on the center line. But yeah, none of that's proposed here.
Mr. Hammond, that's Vice Mayor Henderson. I will share to Ms. Stevens' point, and I know you and I have discussed this before. All around our Metro USD neighborhood is City of Belmead, City of Forest Hills. They have very different protocols for traffic calming. They do use a fair amount of delineators. They put them in the middle on Harding, and so a lot of folks participating here tonight will have those sort of as a frame of reference. But I did want to build also on what Mr. Williford said, and I would actually like to kind of see the supporting case for whether through MUTCD or otherwise that you have to sign every single one of these speed cushions. This is 10 speed cushions. It's a lot. I certainly understand once you come off Harding, or if you were to turn off a West Tyne on to pay, but I would wonder why you could not have in each segment in between where you have other entering streets, one at the start of that segment southbound and one at the start of that segment northbound. Speed limit's the speed limit, fair warning at the start of the street, and people got to slow down. I don't think we need to tell them every dang time there's a speed cushion, because I do concur. We have just aesthetically, I mean, we've got our pretty tree lined streets, and we have our dangerous ditches, and we don't have much edge line. And you're already going to drop 10 speed cushions in here, and then if you have signs for every single one of them, I think neighbors are going to have concerns. So I'd be interested to know kind of a modified plan for that. I know that might be the default in a more typical suburban context, with more space in between, or kind of different context. But I'd be interested to know specifically what the signage plan was in a way that could minimize signage. Agreed. Thank you.
Agree.
And if and when we progress with this plan, will you all provide like the exact location that you're going to be putting the speed cushion as well as the sign?
We certainly will for the speed cushion itself. The signs typically on our plans are not dimensioned out to that detail, but they're either right at it or they're within, typically 10 or 15 feet. Occasionally we'll have one that's further away than that. But yeah, you'll be able to tell exactly. And in fact, there are example traffic calming plans on the website if you want to see the level of detail that is inherent in those. Feel free to look those up. But yeah, at our next meeting, we will show you that in much more detail.
Mr. Hammond, hey, this is Joe Hall in the 400 block page. I want to say thank you for this conversation. And this is a long time coming, so we really appreciate the attention. Safety, particularly around the contours of the park, is really at risk, and so this is a solution is very welcome. So I just want to say that. Thank you. And I want to echo what others have said, especially the vice mayor, about not cluttering up this street with a whole bunch of signs. I mean, I think we've all encountered speed calming bumps like these before. You can see them; they don't hide. And I really think if you were to ask the neighbors what they think about this, you'd get an overwhelming negative response about all that sign clutter. Please don't do that.
Sure. Okay. Great. Thank you.
I have a question.
Okay.
Yeah, this is Keaton Turner with the mayor's office. I was just wondering, earlier you had mentioned that these warning signs are placed after a new road has begun, like in Cheekwood and Alton Road, or Cheekwood Road and Alton Road. So with those being so close together, is there a new set of warning signs for each road, or is it to the extent where they're so close that you just put one at the beginning of Cheek Road and another one at Brookfield Avenue? If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think so. The signs go at the speed cushion locations, and the policy has been that if a car can enter Page, in this case Page, off of a side street, we want them to see a sign in either direction if they're about to encounter a speed cushion. So if you were coming from Brookfield, you would have already encountered one, and you wouldn't need another one. But if you entered a Cheek, if there's any possibility that you're going to encounter a speed cushion, we want you to see a sign upon your first encountering the speed cushion. That's hard to explain. I hope that makes sense. But if there are multiple sets of speed cushions in between two intersections, we don't have to sign at each one of those. And again, that's just sort of the policy. And you guys are right. I mean, that's kind of what we use. That is grounded in, I think, good MUTCD sort of traffic engineering, but it can lead, especially here, certainly looks like it would lead to a lot of signs. It is a lot of signs. I mean, it's a longer project, and so it's just naturally going to have that. But we're going to take a look at that and run that back to our team there with NDOT, and bring you back something that hopefully you will like. Did that answer your question, Mr. Turner? I'm not sure. My explanation probably was kind of garbled there.
Yeah, that does.
You got it. Okay.
I think the overall, well, I don't want to speak for everybody, but I think the overall kind of consensus or thought process is we want to know exactly how many estimated, I guess, signs would be placed on this stretch of road. I think that would help us all visualize. But like you said, I think you said you're going to have a final drawing with those signs on there.
You will see that, yes, sir. Yeah, you'll be able to tell from the plan. You'll be able to tell from the plans if there's a sign assembly proposed along with that set of cushions or not. Absolutely. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
There's a question in the chat. Marion Cole asked us, what about a speed table?
Yeah, speed tables, like we showed, are part of our toolbox. Is one of the tools that we use. If you go into, I know several parks around. Shelby Park has done this. Maybe others. They've used more speed humps. But a reason there is because parks aren't typically a major throughway for emergency vehicles. NDOT and their staff have worked diligently with both police and fire in this program, and kind of have an understanding that, unless it's some very special circumstance where we need a speed I can't even name what that would be. I mean, we've used them, but you know, why we choose those instead of speed cushions, it's just so rare that anyway, we have the agreement with our emergency providers that we will use speed cushions if at all possible because of the lesser impact they have on their services. Page, I don't know if it's a major throughway for fire trucks. I assume you get them just like other streets get them. But you know, we rarely even look at, you know, is this more of a path or not? Because we at some point every street potentially can have emergency response on it. So just by and large, we're going to use speed cushions.
There's also another question in the chat from Phyllis that asks, will people located within the neighborhood but not specifically located on Page Road have a vote to determine final resolution on Page?
Okay, good question. That's a very good question, and it's something we typically cover more in depth at the second meeting. But let's go ahead and address it. I'm going to use that and kind of we'll be glad to come back to this if you think of other questions relative to the plan. Happy to do that. But let's move on into you know, where we're going from here, and I will address that as part of the online ballot. So we're here at meeting one, the red circle that you see. What we will do after tonight is we will engage in our design. We'll walk the street and pick up those details in terms of where exactly we would propose the cushions going. We will come back with that at our meeting two, talk to you about that, show you that, answer any questions you have about that. If there's consensus after that meeting and you guys say we like it, you know, sometimes we need to adjust things, sometimes often we don't, and people say we're ready to move, let's go to the ballot. That's the next to last circle that you see here is the ballot. And so the question is, who actually gets to vote on the project? And the way we do that is hopefully most of you or all of you received a card in the mail for this meeting. We send those to the property owners along the project, in this case, Page Road, within the limits of the project. And you have to have a property that abuts the right of way of the street. So if you live on a side street and you're 2 houses up, you will not get a ballot. However, if you live on the side street at the corner, such that your property abuts the Page Road right of way, you will get a ballot. I'm going to flip back. There are a couple more details about that. This is too small of a scale, but if we have any horizontal properties where, you know, it's kind of 2 dwelling units on one parcel, both of those get a vote. I don't think we have any condominium complexes or anything like that. We get into some involved cases, but yeah, for the most part, if we send that to the property owner of properties abutting the right of way of the street. So that's the simple answer. But anyway, after the online ballot, that's a 6-week process. After that closes, we look at that, and if 66% of the people who voted are in favor of the project, we will then move it to the last step, which is ordering the materials and getting it on the list for our contractors to install that. So that's where we go from here. Any other questions about that? But the ballot is a typical question that comes up, and there may be other aspects you want to hear about, so feel free. All right, great. Here's some contact information. If you think of other things or have other questions that come up, here's a couple of email addresses. Of course, I'm Jeff. I'm the one in green at the bottom. Feel free to email me or that generic NDOT TrafficCalming.Nashville.gov project. That's the best way to reach the NDOT folks who work with this stuff every day. Feel free to reach out to either or both of us with any questions or comments. And I told you I'd give you a link to that. You can just, I usually just Google Metro Traffic Calming, but there's the address and a QR code if you'd like to get on Metro's webpage to find out any more information about traffic calming. I want to respect your time, but I certainly don't want to rush the meeting. If there's anybody who has any final questions or comments, be glad to entertain those at this time. And if not, we will thank you again for your attendance, your interest in this project, especially our participation from our council members and vice mayor. Always glad to have you all. Appreciate what you do for our city. With that, I'm going to conclude the Page Road component of this project. But as I mentioned at the outset, we do have a little bit of information from NDOT, I believe, on the Forest Park Drive project. So, Mr. Oldham, if you were here, I will end my sharing and turn it over to you.
Can you pull up the presentation for Forest?
I'll pull up the
Or the design?
Concept, yes, sir. Give me 1 second.
And for everyone who is staying on, which appears to be everyone, I'm Jason Oldham, Assistant Chief at NDOT. Pretty much manage all things traffic engineering and including traffic calming.
Can you see that?
Yeah, I can see it. It just came in.
Great.
So I think everybody can look at this and orient themselves pretty quickly. This is Forest Park Drive, and again, like probably a majority of the streets in this community, but especially next to park property, there's a lot of foot traffic. There's probably 2 agencies ordering a lot of cushions right now, and it's Nashville DOT and it's the Parks Department, and so there's been interest in getting cushions on Forest Park, and also interest from the community and others on the call. So some of these projects, we do have opportunities occasionally. I've actually got a plan set on my desk right now from Parks to review some cushion placements on a roadway that we maintain, but it's serves the park, and they're going to pay for everything. We're just reviewing to just make sure everything is good before they pay for installation of these cushions. So these are the same cushions that were already talked about on Page Road. We would be placing them 3 locations on Forest Park Drive, just to make it safer for pedestrians and bicyclists accessing the park. What we have done in the past on some of these, kind of different projects that are safety related, that have been kind of in the form of a pilot, where it's a little different from what we've done as far as the traffic calming program. Usually we meet with property owners or an interest group and just discuss it and then vote on it with those who are present. I am not really sure if there's anybody on the call that lives along Forest Park Drive.
We are.
Okay. I don't know if we have more
resident. I'm another resident of Forest Park Drive.
Okay. All right. So we have 2. Do we have anybody else?
Bloodworth.
Okay, 3.
A second ago.
Virginia.
Yes.
Bloodworth.
Yes, I have
All
to
right.
drive down Forest Park to get to Clydeland Court off of Maybell.
Okay. All right, so we've got some representatives from Forest Park.
Virginia Bloodworth, I see, and I think Lyle Beasley just hopped off. He was on it, and Lisa Beasley was on it. She hopped off. Ann Sanford, I don't know if she's still there.
Okay.
I'm here. This is Ann. I'm on Bell Park Circle, so I would be impacted on ingress and egress.
And Christine and Chris Kaderis also on Bell Park Circle.
Okay. All right. So typically how we do this is, in most cases I've been involved with, the votes are pretty much unanimous. And I would say I would like to stick with that on this occasion too.
We're gonna vote on it.
We have let's see, I think the parks folks involved, Tim Nesh, and planning. I think this is part of a larger study with Harriet Brooks with the planning department to look at additional improvements like sidewalks and greenway connectivity and all of that. But this would just be more of an immediate installation of cushions to address speeding on Forest Park Drive. And that would be basically the scope of this effort. And usually we try to monitor, you know, how this performs after the installation, which typically it performs very well. So there's pretty much low risk in most cases for anyone being not satisfied, because vehicles will slow down, like you saw before in the presentation that Jeff gave, to 20, 22 miles per hour on average. So it does slow people down. Are there any questions?
Mr.
Yes.
Oldham, this is Vice Mayor Henderson. As you may be aware, I live down Maybell Lane, and obviously as a council member for this area, worked really hard so that we could try to coordinate improvements on Forest Park with the golf course renovation. That did not happen as hoped, unfortunately. And so I think neighbors may be just a little bit confused about how this is kind of different from Page Road. Page Road is an application through the traditional Traffic Calming Neighborhood Streets program. Forest Park, based on park proximity, volume, and frankly, the dangerous nature of the bend here in Forest Park, with ingress and egress to Cheekwood, a major tourist, institution, and so forth. So this neighbors is kind of coming from a different bucket, so to speak, but obviously these all are kind of interrelated to each other. And so some questions I've gotten, Jason, just subsequent to receipt of the neighborhood postcard, is will these speed cushions applied to Forest Park preclude a safe crossing at Maybell, some other treatment in the bend of Forest Park, the greenway pathway from the safe crossing, stormwater improvements, roadway edge, the landscaping plan for the golf course. I think, citizens remain a little frustrated that we could not pull all these things together in coordination between stormwater and parks and NDOT. And I appreciate that NDOT is kind of holding the through line here and doing what they can do to make the street as safe as possible. But I had hoped that this would kind of extend down, because, without sidewalks, or that end at Bell Park, folks do need to get across the street and then be able to continue to walk to the park or walk to Cheekwood. And our golf course designers have been awesome in holding the space and really wanting to work with the city and parks to find the place for that to go. And the study that's in progress was supposed to kind of front load the study with those specific physical improvements. But as I understand it, we're not there yet. So can you just sort of speak to where this fits in the cycle of things? If these speed cushions would preclude future improvements, and what you understand to be the timeline in coordination for those other improvements that neighbors have been waiting years and years for, safe crossings and a greenway pathway and so forth. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. This would not preclude. I think there's a lot of tools in the toolbox that an agency has, and it takes me about 2 months to order materials, and it takes about 3 or 4 months to get these cushions down on the pavement. Now, the reason why the traffic calming program, it takes a little bit longer is because there's just a significant queue of streets waiting. So that does, there is a backlog. But I would say compared to other types of projects, whether it be drainage, whether it be roadway widenings or special traffic control devices, those do have longer lead times. It does involve planning, it involves engineers preparing plans, coordinating with other departments, finding the resources, the funds, right-of-way utility impacts, et cetera, to deliver those. So definitely, I don't want to in any way convey this would preclude. There's not been one single discussion that I've been a part of where that was stated, implied. This is really just to try to get something out sooner to help slow traffic down. Even projects that have sidewalks and have perfect drainage and have roundabouts and traffic circles still come to us for traffic calming measures like speed cushions and tables. So this is really probably the best thing that you will see that slows traffic down.
Jason,
yep.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but
no, go ahead.
My name is Rich Croft, and I'm on Forest Park Drive. I have a question. How do you ascertain how many of these cushions you would put in that expanse? Because it strikes me, seeing the way people speed up and when they speed up, et cetera, it looks to me like we should have, instead of 3 cushions, should be 4. But I don't know what you determine. How you determine that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of material on traffic calming because pretty much every city and state in the U.S. has a program, especially any urban larger city. But anyway, the kind of the rule of thumb or kind of national best practice is around 400, 350, 400 feet spacing of these cushions. Once you slow down to 20 miles an hour and you start to accelerate at a comfortable rate of acceleration, and then you have to start decelerating again, the 400 seems to work in most cases to keep people from going back over the speed limit. If we space them out like to 1,000 feet, people can get up above the speed limit again, and then before they have to slow down. So
actually, Jason, I was suggesting you add another cushion.
Yeah, no, I heard you. I got you. Add another. I'm not opposed to that. I don't have a good scale here. I think we're saying a 300.
Jason, are you looking at the same plot that I am?
I'm seeing 3 cushions on the screen.
Yeah, but I mean,
here.
you're looking at the same graphic that I am.
Absolutely.
Okay. When you come out of Cheekwood, that very first cushion, people, and remember, it's the end of the day, and people tend to accelerate right in there. And by the way, that's also a dangerous place to be walking. Our house would be the very first house on the left-hand side prior to the second cushion. And I think I see cars all the time accelerating right through there. So I was just thinking myself, and this is not my business, is to have a cushion right adjacent to our house. The people coming off of Bell Park Circle would not have to negotiate with it right away, and then have 2 more. So a total of 4 spaced. Oh, the other thing I wanted to tell you is in front of our house, not only are you leaving Cheekwood, but you're going downhill. So yeah, and the rest of it is flat. So you have a tendency to accelerate just because of the downhill. I just want somebody to look at that, actually put eyeballs on it, so they see where the acceleration places are. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, our traffic calming consultants typically go out, and that's why Jeff kind of gave that disclaimer, you know, before, that this is kind of a concept. So we can either add a series or we can shift them around.
Yeah.
If you guys, I'm sure Jeff is taking notes here. If everybody's in agreement with 4, I mean, I'm happy to say 4 right now, and get everybody's consensus on that.
I'd like to just speak up about 4. We're at 1314, about the middle of the block there. So
Okay.
I think, Rich, I understand what you're saying, and we want to just go down, and 4 might be something to consider. But with 4, that will have 8 signs going each way. We'll have a lot more of those signs
So
up and down our pretty.
I'm not going to do a lot of signs here. I think there's good. I think at the beginning, you know, right where you come from Page onto Forest Park, you would see speed cushions ahead, and also coming from the Cheekwood side, speed cushions ahead. Most of that area, I mean, you're from Maybell Lane. I might have another one, but we're just not going to have.
We don't need
a
another
lot of
one on
signs here.
Maybell. We all live on a dead end. We know they're there. There's no through traffic.
That's a dead end. Okay, yeah.
Yep.
If there's no through traffic, and then I'm not even going to have one there. I'll probably have 2 signs, and I mean, all of this is pretty visible. If you're coming from both ways, you're going to see the cushions on the roadway. So
Let me throw this in too, Linda. I wasn't. You know, we don't really need to have one adjacent to y'all's house either. I was just thinking of that hill and the way people come flying out of Cheekwood, because I see them accelerating down through there.
Right.
And so I thought to have one, even if we move that first cushion in front of our house so that people won't accelerate. It just seems, I just want it to be considered. That's all. That's all. I'm not a traffic manager.
Mr. Oldham, I would say, as I understood it, when we were looking and talking about the capital spending plan with Ms. Alarcon and Mr. Freeze, and we thought that we were going to be able to advance a capital improvement here that was aligned with the golf course renovation. We were looking at a crosswalk at Maybell Lane and the end of the Bell Park sidewalks. And so again, recognizing that speed cushion placement does not preclude future improvement, what that, you know, crosswalk will look like, if that crosswalk is, you know, a table style or otherwise, or, you know, folks just need to slow down before the crosswalk. I would ask us just to be mindful of at least the preliminary design. I had understood that, you know, on-call engineers, whether in the context of the larger study or the capital improvement, we're going to look at kind of the best place to cross, and, you know, where to put the greenway path and everything. I mean, that's all and ever that anybody has been wanting at this point, because it informs, you know, any potential stormwater improvement, because the roadway is extremely degraded after years and years of construction and roadside parking. The roadside is crumbling. It has standing stormwater. And so, you know, the road, as I understand it, is in the queue to be repaved. And so, you know, with striping and crosswalks and all that, I would just ask it at a minimum, we consider the crosswalk, which I know you'll have to know where the greenway pathway is going to be. But yeah, so I think we want to make sure that that crossing that we're going to need, or the sidewalk extension, is a safe crossing. And to Mr. Crofton's point, what makes it feel unsafe right there is people are really picking up speed in that bend and descending and not yet paying attention. And you're trying to get across and go uphill in a bend with people coming and going. That is really the safety pinch point there.
I would like to add that we're also, those of us that live down Maybell are trying to, egress from our home and dealing with that, high volume of traffic, not just the high speed, but it's very difficult to actually get pulled out onto Forest Park safely when Cheekwood is having an event, or at the end of the day when, the mountain bikers are finishing up at Percy Warner or what have you. It's not just the sheer speed, it's the overall volume. And I
Right.
thought there were plans to address that as well.
That would be good, because we back out of our driveway. I mean, yours at least is going forward.
Yeah.
Oh, geez.
Well, and just to support that, coming off of Bell Park Circle, you can sit and wait for quite a while before you could turn right close to Page onto Forest Park.
Yep.
That was my thought. Whoever you, Peter, you brought that up. The volume is a thing. This is a road that was never intended to have this volume. It's not built that way. I don't understand why we're not solving that question mark, because we have trucks. It's not just cars. It's massive trucks, especially as the wedding weekend comes up. You have every kind of truck you could possibly imagine coming up there. And those guys going bump, 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 bump all up the street are going to make me crazy. Probably could live with that. I'm not sure the street can live with that. And we used to have, that there was a mandate that those kind of trucks were going to go in on Cheek Road, go up to Cheekwood through that service entrance. That doesn't happen anymore.
Well, some, but
Not enough. So it's not just a calming situation, it's a volume situation.
Yeah. Well, and don't forget the big buses that come through there with big tour groups.
Right.
Right.
And I don't know why they're sending them up the street. But.
Well, and Angie, you had mentioned years ago to us, you said, our road was built to a residential home, when a family lived at the Cheekwood property. And it was never meant for a road that would carry tourism.
Yes, Linda, I appreciate that very much. I mean, as Mr. Hammond touched on for Page Road and otherwise, these are very narrow streets. They're very, they are neighborhood streets. And so that has always been a challenge. And so for the larger study, though I sort of, was grousing a bit about the timing of it, to be frank, because it felt like the capital improvement that we needed for safety at the top of Forest Park, aligned with the golf course, got kind of sidelined in lieu of the larger study. That said, when I first came into service of this neighborhood, I asked the then Berry administration to do a study about, who comes from where, for what purpose, Highway 100, Cheek Road, Page Road, the park. They hadn't even added, I guess, mountain biking had just been added, all the programming. So I am cautiously optimistic about the potential of that study now that we've pressed pause on it and we can kind of make sure that we're looking at the broader scope. That was kind of dropped on me at the last minute, but I got right in there at that first meeting and said, this has to be about the larger neighborhood, the multimodal needs, getting, neighbors may think it sounds silly, but I think, getting folks on this west side for these cultural and natural assets coming to Cheekwood, the Warner Parks, Bellmead Plantation, and so forth, and getting off at a really nice bus stop and, getting their B-cycle to cycle up our pretty tree-lined neighborhood street, to get up here instead of always being in cars. We've got to do all the things. I think, speed cushions are part of those things, and they don't preclude others. And so I just remain pretty disconcerted about the extent to which people speed in and out of Cheekwood, the mountain bikes, the parks, even going to meet a friend to go walking, right? People are zooming up to go meet the friend to slow down and walk. So the reason I had kind of asked them to hold and kind of do these together is because if you put 10 sets of speed cushions on Page Road and then you don't put anything on Forest Park, what's everybody going to do on Forest Park once they get over all those speed cushions on Page? They're going to speed up on Forest Park. And so I do think we have to do them kind of in concert with each other. That study it's funded. That was in the capital spending plan. We can look at all those things. I want to have definitely I've spoken with Councilman Member Ewing about having a neighborhood focused meeting regarding that study. The reason that seemed to be going so fast was because we were just trying to kind of front load the capital piece of it, what might be recommended for the border of the park and the golf course, because we knew the golf course was getting finished. So I was asking planning to kind of hurry up on that front piece about where's the greenway going to be, where's the crosswalk going to be, what are you going to do about the stormwater, and where are you going to plant the trees. That's the only part that I really asked to be kind of moving fast. But the larger, bigger questions about ingress, egress, parking, all those kind of existential fraught issues, we got to keep talking about them. But there's, from my perspective, we needed to press pause on that part of it. So.
Angie, this is Lyle Beasley. Just one thought that's not about the speed cushions. I'm okay with the 3 cushions, or I don't know about 3 versus 4, but the top one that Rich was talking about, very near there, a new picket fence has gone up on the golf course that's so close to the road that it's pinching the pedestrians and the bikers right there above that top pinch point. So when you say greenways, do you have a feeling for how a greenway with bicycle access would come up this road?
Yeah, I was very disappointed to see that fence, Lyle. I wasn't aware that it was going to be put in. I've been pretty clear that fence does not preclude any pedestrian safety, bikeway, greenway solution. I don't know if I am not privy to. I have asked to be updated on any sort of conceptual look at or preliminary engineering. The golf course designers held space for us in that bend, and as you all know, reoriented that hole to keep the golf balls away from your homes. Yep. And so forth. So, I don't know if they want the pathway to go on the high side or the low side, or where it will be. But the goal is once you get to the end of Bell Park sidewalks, you can either safely cross that road or proceed on sidewalks, but you can safely walk and bike and get past kind of all this ingress and egress and get down to the park without having to walk in the roadway. We have plenty of public land here with which to work. This is not rocket science. We've been talking about this for years and years and years. And the fact that we could not get it all together when we were moving dirt on this golf course at the same time is very frustrating to me, and I know it is to you all as well. But yes, I've been very clear that fence does not preclude anything. If it is a hint at the fact that they want to do the path on the other side, I don't know it, and I'm not privy to it. So.
Thank you for paying attention to it, because it was crazy how they pinched access unnecessarily. But I'll keep fingers crossed that somebody wise figures it out.
Agreed. Thank you, sir.
So here's what I'd like to do, because I know everybody probably wants to be done with traffic calming conversations. I would like for all of those who are from Forest Park to enter their emails into the chat so that our consultant will have your contacts. And what I'd like to do is maybe table the vote, but send out an email to you guys who have attended with like final plans showing maybe the signs, the 4 cushions, or maybe 3, maybe show both, and just see if everyone is okay with that. And I can send that out when we have that ready, and try to get this squared away. These cushions, We have paving projects all the time. I've actually installed cushions on a project that was about to get paved in like 4 months because people were getting hurt and people were having wrecks and it was dangerous. And I didn't want to wait any longer to put these cushions out. They can be popped up when pavement comes through, road improvements come through, water comes through. So we pop them up, we store them, then we put them back down. So it's not going to be, again, it's not going to preclude any improvements. It's really going to benefit, you know, visitors, walkers, joggers, bikers, people pulling out of their driveways, you on the call. If this goes in before Page, that's probably better than Page going in before this. You know, we can see up to 15 or 20% of traffic at most diverting. So if your concerns are with volume, some of that volume is going to find another way to go. And some of it won't, but you know, some of it will. If I'm pulling a lawnmower on a trailer, or I'm pulling something else on a trailer, and it's easier for me to go in a smooth ride on the other side of Cheekwood, I'm probably going to go to the other side of Cheekwood to come in instead of Forest Park Drive.
Mr. Oldham, there's no other route to get to where you're talking about going, but on Page Road, yeah, people might take an alternate route, but to go to and from Cheekwood at present, there's only one
And
point
Percy
of
Warner Golf
ingress
Course.
or egress,
Yeah,
which I think some neighbors would say is part of the challenge. So
yeah, thank you for that, Angie, because just so you know, Jason, the house that we're talking about, our house, 100% of the people that go into Cheekwood ingress and egress in front of our house. So there is no other choice. Anyway, just thought I'd point that out.
I see the back access. There's not a way to use that. All right.
Yeah, and also the not only Cheekwood, but the connector trail for the golf course, for the Percy Warner trails.
And the golf course.
And the mountain bike and the golf course with the pro shop that they're redoing that will be probably a bit more of a destination once that's finished. So yes, we will all have this traffic no matter what.
Exactly.
Well, hopefully it's going slower then.
Well, that would help.
What about the people that in our neighborhood on Forest Park that are not on this chat? Can we include their emails? Because I think they would want to be involved and available tonight.
I mean, you can, that's totally fine. I really, you know, this pilot is more of a pilot. So, you know, if we sent out cards, I believe, to a large group in Forest Park and also on Page Road for that other meeting. Maybe they couldn't attend. I know everybody has, you know, makes plans and can't attend all meetings, but I'm totally fine if you want to share their emails with Jeff Hammond, and we can push out those plans to them. But yeah, we were just trying to get something moving on this and not delay it. It's got another, you know, funding source and is not officially part of the traffic calming program. So we do have some flexibility, but we typically just try to have, you know, good support if we're doing something outside of that program. We even have some cushions in some of the bikeway program. Basically, the bikeways program has like a public meeting, a community meeting, and you know, it's all who show up to that meeting, you know, kind of cast their vote, and you know, the program lead moves forward. And you'll see that also with larger DOTs have a public hearing just to get input from the public, and then they move forward. So we were kind of doing kind of the same thing here. If you show up and you cast your vote for or you support, we just kind of move forward. So
Mr. Oldham, I appreciate that this is different neighbors than Page Road and the traffic calming and a certain number of people and everybody on the ballot and so forth. But what I would suggest to you all in a situation like this is that, if you're coming to neighbors, especially given all the context and the issues, and as long as this has been discussed for so long, well over a year, that there were a more complete design. So I think it's understandable on Page Road that was a preliminary conceptual kind of design, that's not precisely where all the cushions are going to be. But here there's many, there's fewer cushions, but there are just some context issues relative to the park and the safe crossing and where the future path will be and all that kind of stuff. And so I think that's just what you're hearing from neighbors. I think folks are very supportive. They want the traffic to be slowed down here. And so I don't think, from having talked to these neighbors for a long time, I don't think what we're going to get into is an oppositional posture by, people being against the cushions. I just would say, if for pilot type or different bucket or different process, my feedback to NDOT would be, that's great, let's do more of that. But when you come to this meeting, the design needs to be more refined and more, there just needs to be more detail and design. Then I think if people were here, they could sign off on it and we could move on ahead. I just think there's a lack of specificity here that, given as long as this has been discussed and all the mitigating issues, people are just going to want to know more specifically, where exactly are the cushions? What would the signage look like? Where will the crosswalk be? Where is the greenway supposed to go? And, could there be some cushions down further into the park? I mean, that's kind of been the perennial issue here. Is it NDOT or is it the park? Is it park or is it NDOT? That roadway, Forest Park Drive, driveway, whatever, citizens don't care if it's the park road or the NDOT road. And so people do speed all the way down past the bottom left corner of your picture, and that continues to be dangerous for folks down there. So I would say I would like to see, where's the speed cushion going to go down there? So I think everybody is very, very ready to move ahead. Don't need to do it through the, 6-week ballot, every neighbor kind of approach, but we do need more design details, please, would be my suggestion.
Yeah, thank you, Vice Mayor Henderson. I can definitely do additional details as far as the cushions go. I am really out of the loop on the other improvements and other things being studied at this location. So, if you want to see more than cushions, I think it may take a longer lead time. Because I just am not looped in on those other elements that are important, and I know everybody wants to see those. And honestly, I mean, if you have roadway improvements on Forest Park Drive, all of these cushions are going to go up. They're going to be coming up to make those improvements and then put back down. And their locations where they're put back down could potentially change based on those plans, whether it be a crosswalk, whether it be whatever, that's going on. So I would not think I would not take this to be, this is the permanent location for these cushions. So, be that as it may, I can come back definitely with more detailed plan, and show, very detailed locations for the signs, for the cushions. I just cannot promise I can bring back, the other items you mentioned. But I could do that with Page, or I could do it separate from Page. Actually would almost prefer having this at a separate meeting, probably sooner than the next Page meeting.
Yes.
But I can combine them. It's totally up to you guys.
Well, from my perspective, I think we need to stay divorced from Page.
Okay.
That's just my opinion. I'm not, it's whatever Angie and everybody else thinks.
I would concur with Mr. Crofton. Again, they are related to each other, but I don't want them to get conflated with each other. I think there's just, it's kind of a different one will have a little bit of a knock-on effect to the other. So it's good that we're talking about them at the same time. But to Mr. Oldham's point, and I'm glad he has reiterated it several times, it is important for neighbors to know, given all the context, the delays, the challenges, that, speed cushions being put down won't preclude the future improvements. But I think anytime you're doing stuff like this and talking about it, it's important to kind of keep pushing on those other things. And I will keep doing that in concert with Councilwoman Ewing. I'm not sure if Sandy is back, but she has had to step away. Her daughter has an athletic awards ceremony this evening. So she is there, and she and I will be conferring afterwards. So my being a little more vocal at this juncture is just because Ms. Ewing could not remain with us. But she has been updated on all this, and we have been in communication with each other. So, Jason, I think it would just be before these neighbors are saying, yeah, let's push the button and go, not suggesting we need to slow it down in the typical, other traffic calming mode. But I think folks just want to understand it, just a little more granular detail, exactly where the cushions are. And I do think where the crosswalk is going to be is related. Again, I know it doesn't preclude it, but I do think it's a related point. So, and as I understood it from speaking with Director Alarcon previously, I thought that there had been some preliminary engineering done for that with the on-call engineer, but maybe I was mistaken. Check.
Yeah, I mean, I can check. I mean, I would be happy, to find out, where, potential tentative crosswalk is. Typically with the cushions, we try to stay away from the intersections where crosswalks are, unless it's like a mid-block. And a mid-block crosswalk would definitely be, potentially tricky, potentially a conflict with the cushion. So, but yeah, I'll check and I'll follow up, with the consultant and just see if we have something that I could show tentatively on this design. But I just can't guarantee it because I'm really not as looped in as you probably would hope for me to be. But yeah, no, I mean, I definitely can give you more details. I mean, I've done almost, street views of each location before. So I can definitely give you more. No problem there.
Jason, have you been out here to actually see the road?
I have. I've been out there. I've actually, gone to Cheekwood. I have like a seasonal pass there. And I've been to the park. So yes, I've used Forest Park, and I've driven 20 miles per hour each time. So
I love your mood.
So Jason, you're part of the problem. You're
I'm part of the problem. I have 4 boys, and I have to do something with them.
Yeah, I think that's the elephant in the room that we're kind of all missing a little bit. And we've got 2 elephants in the room, Cheekwood and Metro Parks.
Yeah,
do they have any solutions to our problem? Because we're getting the results of their successes, which, good for them, and we enjoy both as well. But I think they need to be involved in some of these solutions. There may be other solutions than, we're just going to one solution is all I'm hearing from everyone.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, that's all right. I feel like we've heard one solution, speed humps, and that's kind of it. And we're there, period. And it seems to me there should be some other solutions, and that Metro Parks is part of the problem, and Cheekwood's part of the problem, and we need to bring them into hopefully some of the better solutions to this.
This is Jane McLeod with Cheekwood, and I just want to let you know.
I did know you were on, Jane. I saw.
I just want you to know that absolutely we have several ideas and suggestions, and they're all being presented as part of the larger study, which Angie and Sandy are both aware of. So there are several ideas and suggestions beyond the scope of this conversation, but I do want to let you know that that is happening.
Yeah, I'd like to hear those before we take a vote on Page Road. I'd like to hear what some of those options might be, or what some of their solutions may be from Cheekwood and from Metro Parks.
Sandy and Angie, I'll let you decide how you want to move forward with that, because that's part of the larger plan.
Yeah, you know, I don't know, to be frank, what any of the proposed solutions are. I mean, aside from you know, conceptually that, you know, Page Road is a traffic calmed neighbor way on which, you know, people can kind of bike and use the bus and connect, and that there is a side pathway and crossings and so forth, and that you know, more broadly, you know, how are we getting folks to these destinations that aren't always, you know, single folks in cars? And, you know, is there access from Cheek Road? You know, could there be in time, conceptually, feasibly, access from Highway 100? All those kind of larger, bigger existential questions. But Phyllis, to your point, those larger existential questions and kind of the bigger elephants in the room, you know, here we are kind of 8 years later, still talking about this. And I think what I was trying to advance in the last capital spending plan was something to make this part of the roadway safe and accessible for people that aren't in cars. I did my best to get Parks and NDOT and Stormwater and Cheekwood and everybody at the table. They are at the table. The study, the timing of that was not of my choosing. I did get everyone around the table, and I do appreciate that for many years, Jane, Parks, everyone has said that they are willing to coordinate, work together, cooperate on what these kind of pathways and things might look like, and safe crossings and the landscaping for all that. And, you know, I'd really hoped we could create a beautiful capital improvement with a willing golf course designer and a willing botanic garden and a parks department. You know, it's the kind of thing that, you know, looked like it should be something that we could get done, but the previous mayor didn't see fit to advance that capital improvement, and we went ahead with the study. And so I'm trying to make the best of the study, but it has been paused a little bit. And so I just don't want, Phyllis, that, I mean, it is very, very unsafe on Forest Park for people trying to walk to and from the park. And so again, with the commitment that putting speed cushions down does not preclude any future capital improvements or safety. I hope that we won't, you know, we do have to contextualize it, keep talking about it. I'm interested to know what Jane's speaking about as to the particular proposals. I've not seen any kind of physical recommendation for the ingress and egress point there of Cheekwood. So, you know, I look forward to that, and we can, in concert with Sandy Ewing, continue those meetings. But we were kind of at the finish line of an administration. It didn't feel right to be kind of pushing ahead on anything. So that's why there was a pause on that. So
when's that anticipated, Angie? Do you know any kind of anticipation date for that study?
You know, I have reached out to planning. I'm not sure if the mayor's office is still on the line, but I did bring it to the attention of the mayor at the golf course ribbon cutting, just to kind of catch him up on what some of the challenges have been over here. So, you know, the study by the planning department, often we put our planning department on something when, you know, we've got multiple departments kind of converging. You know, they, as I understand it, are, you know, putting it out to kind of RFP. I've not seen the proposal or the study. That was being coordinated by the last mayor's office, and I was not privy to the kind of last iteration of it. And the last iteration really surprised me, to be frank. So it's been a little bit of a, not ideal process from a timing and a neighborhood engagement standpoint. And that was, despite my best efforts. So I think we should just press the reset button on that, catch neighbors up on what we've done thus far. But we've got a new mayor's administration, and I'm just sort of looking to, what they're wanting to do for situations like this that I see to be real opportunities, right? A great botanic garden, an asset, a real good community piece, a golf course, multiple departments, trying to use all these challenges that make us all feel real beleaguered living up here, potentially part of the solution. But I wish I could say more, Phyllis. It was, it's funded to the tune of $500K from a study perspective. And I want to make sure that, it includes all the things that neighbors want it to include. I have been at the table a few times trying to kind of make sure everything that I've heard from you all over 8 years is part of it. But I've not seen then sort of the output of, okay, this is what we heard from the council member and all the departments and the major stakeholders, and this is what we would propose. I've not seen that myself yet.
Is it a third party? Is it a
Pardon?
Is it a third party study that was engaged, or in-house, or what?
It's only been in-house up to this point. So it has not been put out to a third party or one of our kind of on-call, type folks, or put out to RFP like that. So there was a threshold moment, and we just kind of said, let's pause, because we were in kind of a hurry up posture relative to the golf course completion. But again, that was for the capital aspects, the immediate capital aspects on Forest Park. That's the only part I was saying, hey, let's get going on that. But the larger, broader questions and some of these bigger things, those shouldn't be, hurried. And we want to make sure that the scope of the study and what we're asking to be studied, that there's some neighborhood visibility on that, and that Ms. Ewing, as your new council member, myself as a previous and a neighborhood resident, have actually seen that. I haven't seen it. So
okay, thanks for the info.
Yep.
So based on what Jason has said about the fact that if we put these, well, I forget what you call them now, speed cushions or whatever down, and they can be moved, and it's totally a separate thing from the page deal, and it has nothing to do with our trying to take traffic away from Forest Park, just slow it down for now. I think we need to, quit kicking the can down the road, and let's try to move with this, since we're at this point not tied with Page.
Agreed, Mr. Crofton. Thank you.
I knew you did. You're doing a good job.
Well, I mean, I think it sounds like everybody's in support. I mean, I'm just going to move forward with like a final design. If you'll share your emails, I'll shoot that out to everybody. If I don't hear back from anybody when that's submitted after a couple weeks, then I'll send an email, just saying, hey, please reply. If you have any concerns, we'll just move forward. I'll give everybody a tentative date for installations, and we can do that. Or if anybody is strongly opposed, please speak now. But I'll definitely show everyone what is planned, so that you can see it and you can share it with your neighbors.
This is still Rich Crofton. I have never done anything with these WebEx things before. I think I put my email and my wife's email into the chat area. Is there any way for me to check and see if it's there? I don't want to assume that you got it and not.
Rich, actually, I mean, here's what you can do.
It's in
Jeff,
there.
It is?
yeah,
richcrofton@me.com.
Okay, great. And Meg Crofton at gmail.com?
Yep, megcrofton@gmail.com. It's in
Excellent. Thank you. Thank
Sure.
you. I appreciate it.
yeah, and you can also, Jeff Hammond. Jeff, are you still on the call? You know,
Yeah,
you can.
I'm here, and I do see all of those chats. That chat will be recorded, so we will have access to it. If you
Yeah.
put your email in there, we've got it.
Okay, great.
Yep. Looks like everybody's in there. Looks like it. So we'll just move forward, and we'll try to do something in the interim to slow folks down, and especially for someone who's backing out of their driveway, that will help.
Well, I feel sorry for the Grahams.
Well, we're not the only, well.
No,
yeah,
I know.
We're not the only ones
Right, right.
that have to back out. There's quite a few of us on Forest Park that have to back out.
Oh, I know. I never realized that. That'd be god awful.
It can be challenging.
Well, we could do like a 10-point turn. Just gets a
You
little.
have to rely on the kindness of strangers,
Yeah.
which is Nashville's pretty good.
I will also include on those plans kind of a tentative location for a crosswalk. I'm already texting others, and I'm hearing that I can do that, and they will share that with me. So, but I'll make sure to label it as you know, potential location, so that you can see, you know, there's not going to be a cushion that conflicts with that location.
And Angie, just to be sure, and so that Jason knows also, if I understand you correctly, you're talking about the sidewalk that is on the east side of Maybell would come down to Forest Park Drive and then cross over at that point. Is that what you were saying?
Yes, sir. As basically you get to the end of Bell Park and the sidewalks on Forest Park, and then you are dumped out into the roadway, and you have to, you know, walk in the road with ingress and egress to all these major things. And so, you know, I don't know if you need to kind of continue and walk on the, you know, north side, and then the path is over there, or if it's on the golf course side. As I understood it, we were going to do preliminary engineering to assess where that should be to inform the final golf course design, their fence placement, their gateways, their landscaping. So they know where to kind of, you know, plant the trees and do the signage and the wayfinding and all the things related to the golf course.
But again, that crosswalk, that could be changed at a later time. I see, because I thought you were talking about extending that sidewalk on a north-south thing to go across the street. But now that I'm talking to you, I think you might be thinking east-west.
Well, you know, the crosswalk, I think the challenge for Metro, understandably, is ADA compliance, right? And so if you're just kind of crossing Forest Park, and then, hey, we've got a greenway over here, there's got to be something to receive it, right?
Exactly.
They can't just kind of stripe down the stripes of paint. And
Right.
so didn't want to cut in concrete and do a slab and say, okay, here's a landing, when that's not where the landing was actually going to be in the future, right? So
Right.
something that seems as simple as just, you know, putting some paint on the road to help people get across and have a place to be that's safe is invariably not that simple.
Yeah,
So
I was trying to help Jason at that point, but at this point that's premature because we have no idea what that crosswalk's going to be like.
right, and we should have known that by now.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah, but I would be interested to know kind of where that went. I thought that area had been surveyed, as I understood it, but
Yeah.
anyway, I need to catch up on that. I know Councilwoman Ewing and I have requested that to understand where that fits relative to the larger study and to this work. But yeah, if Mr. Oldham, if you can just be in touch with staff about where that's going to be, but I just think as I understood it, there were conversations that were happening between Parks and NDOT about where that safe crossing and path should be. I'm kind of agnostic as to where it is. I just want it to be in the safest place that makes it kind of easy to do. So.
Yeah, Jason, sometime you need to walk into Cheekwood to experience what we do when we're trying to walk over to the golf course or from Maybell Lane to just past the entrance to Cheekwood is critically dangerous if you're walking. So anyway, that's why we're so adamant about getting this plan to take care of all those issues. Anyway.
I understand and appreciate that. You know, a lot of the narrow roads that we see that are actually in the traffic calming program that don't have sidewalks, almost all of them have pedestrian injuries. So I definitely am aware of the risk here, especially with the volumes that you have.
Not all of them have a metro park adjacent with a willing partner saying that you can put the greenway and the path over there. So we really do have an opportunity here, Mr. Oldham, because it's not our typical how you construct a sidewalk challenge. And you were so right about what you're saying. But I just think, you know, here, if we can please try to coordinate. We have willing partners in Cheekwood. I know Cheekwood wants everybody to be safe. I know the people at Friends of Warner Parks and the Parks Department and the golf course designers want everybody to be safe. And so we've been talking about this for years and years, and everybody wants to make it safe and better. So let's just get that done too, please, in addition to these lovely speed cushions in the near term. Thank you, sir.
I'll cut you a check. It always comes down to money, it seems. But yeah, I will relay that.
Yeah, and this is Kedron with the mayor's office again. If you need any help, I guess, you know, finding more information about the study, or you need more coordination from our office, I'm happy to reach out to Kendra with sustainability and resilience and see if she can find some more information for Vice Mayor and the council member as well as the NDOT. Just let me know.
That's very kind, Kedron. I appreciate it. I think I'm meeting with the mayor this week. So thank you.
All right. Well, thank you all for showing up and sticking with us till the end with Forrest and providing your emails. I'll definitely get out the designs to you. I'm hoping I'll talk with our consultant, but I mean this short section hopefully will not take long to develop. Get out in the field and do some good placement of these cushions and show you what we have. So it sounds like you've waited long enough for many other improvements, and I definitely don't want to keep you waiting for this. So we'll try to turn this around quickly. But again, I do appreciate you attending this meeting.
Thank you, Jason, Jeffrey, Angie. Thank you for being here tonight.
Yes, and Councilwoman Ewing as well, who returned and joined us. So she is doing, she and I were in committee meetings together. Then she she participated in the front end of the meeting. She then went to her daughter's event and then joined us back in the meetings. Yes, so kudos to Councilwoman Ewing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Sandy.
Thank you so much.
All right. Well, everyone have a great evening and be safe out there.
Okay.
You too.
Good night.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.